When you look at evolution, the major problem they've had since Darwin's day is most of this stuff will not work unless you have every single part. If you're missing one part, the bacterioflagellum, it will not work. So therefore, evolution will not work unless and until all the parts are designed, produced, made, shipped to the job site, assembled, etc. And that problem Darwin had, he had no idea how these systems work. So how could we evolve from molecules to people by a gradual means? There's no way that we can do this. How do evolutionists respond when I bring this up? They say, well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. The best example was I spoke in Canada not too long ago. And there was a girl who went to a Catholic school. And in Canada, they can teach creationism. Okay, no problem. We're about the only country in the world that can teach creationism. As you know, Carl Ball went to Fiji. I went to with him, and no problem teaching creationism. There's no problem. And when I mention that to the people in Fiji, they look at you like there must be something wrong. Why in the world, in America, can't you teach creationism? Or can't you at least critique Darwinism? Well, anyway, she went to a Catholic school, and she asked the nun if, indeed, I just couldn't understand evolution. It just doesn't, it makes sense. It doesn't work. And the nun, and in this is a school you can teach creation, the nun said, young lady, you need to have more faith. That's literally what she said. You need to have more faith. And she was not even exposed to any of these creationist ideas or any of the problems with Darwinism. She just saw it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. And so she asked her teacher. She came to my lecture because the teacher just said you had to have more faith. And she just, I just don't have the faith. I mean, how can molecules become people? I just don't have the faith. So she came to my lecture so she could hear the other side. So that was the first time she had heard the other side. I didn't talk about this, but I talked about some very different subject. But I'm just surprised in schools where they can teach the other side, they can't. Well, the reason is they go to university, as this nun did, what are they going to learn? They'll learn only one side. They're not going to be aware of the other side. And so therefore you have to dig, you have to do research on your own, and that's why I've written all those books, those 13 books. So you have the research you can do, and then you can understand, indeed, why evolution just is not possible. It's just clearly wrong. The best example of that is, you may be surprised, but that historically, the scientists were, with rare exceptions, scientists were in favor of discrimination against certain minorities. They were racist. And virtually all scientists, now there may have been some we don't know about, but Franz Boas was one scientist we know who was not a racist, and he is a rare exception. Every time they talk about this, they always mention him. And I wonder, don't you have another example? So scientists, without exception, were racist. They really believed that blacks and Jews and Slavics and American Indians and Japanese and Chinese were all members of inferior races. And they all must be killed because, it took a while they realized, but they all must eventually be killed because they would interbreed with a superior race and they would cause racial degeneration. If a Jew marries a German, you have a Jew. If a black marries a German, you have a black. You never have a German if a German marries a Jew or a black. And they thought Jews were a different race, which of course is ludicrous. Now we can see how absolutely not only ludicrous, it's just not true. And the best example, of course, for Christians is we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. And about a third of my family is black. And therefore I'm very successful, I might add. And therefore, just from personal experience with my family members, it's obvious that there is brighter than me and most of my other part of my family. It's just not true, these ideas about racial inferiority. And how could intelligent scientists believe this? Well, they did. And I mentioned this in my book. The Holocaust, the killing of 6 million Jews and 5 million Slavics, who were also inferior race, occurred, and this is very clearly documented, occurred by the direction, the implementation, the motivation, carried out, etc., by the medical doctors and the professors. And that's what caused the Holocaust. Hitler gets the blame, but I guess buck stops here, so got to blame somebody. But we ought to blame who caused it, and it was the professors. And this is well documented. We know not only they caused it, but we know who, etc., and we have their writings. And so we know the university professors and the doctors caused the Holocaust, and they were the ones that supported it. In fact, when this was brought up to Hitler, Hitler would say, I'm not, go ask the doctors. They know. They have the information on this. And they did. So I estimate about 500 million people were murdered by Darwinian ideas. And one good, my background is partially Finnish, and the Finns were good fighters on Hitler's side, and so Hitler thought they were an inferior race, the Finns. And so Hitler made them honorary Aryans. He did the same thing with the Japanese and the Chinese. They became honorary Aryans. That to me shows the ludicrousness of the whole idea. But yet, why was there consensus among scientists that certain races, well, just about every race except the northern Germans, just about every race was inferior? How would they believe something so, today, we recognize stupid? And these ideas are still out there. You can see, of course, the good example of the fellow who shot up the synagogue and killed 11 people in Boston.